Today I'm going to speak on COVID-19 vaccines, and I'll briefly cover over the available vaccines available right now, their efficacy in brief, their population level impact globally as well as Indian scenario. And if time permits, I'll speak over on variants and mutations also. And in the end, I'll invite you all for your questions and I'll try to answer as many as possible. So you see the coming to the phase 1 and phase 2 trials. These were the key findings of these phase 1 and 2 trials of these vaccine candidates. Now we have around 10 candidates, 10 vaccines available on different, at least 4 different platforms. So this is the key findings. If you see the immunogenicity wise, the amount of neutralizing antibodies elicited by different candidates, it was lowest by the inactivated vaccines. So you can keep them at the lower pedestal. And the highest amount of neutralizing antibodies were induced by protein subunit, which is from Novavax, as well as the 2 mRNA vaccine, the Pfizer and Moderna. And Oxford AstraZeneca, as well as certain other vector vaccines, they were of the medium range. Coming to the tolerability and the reactogenicity of these vaccines, the adenovirus vector vaccines, all whether Oxford's or Johnson Johnson's or CanSino's adenovirus 5 vector, they were poorly tolerated. And but on the other hand, the inactivated vaccines and Novavax subunit vaccines, they were very well tolerated. And there was hardly any reactogenicity with these vaccines. There were definitely some side effects were there, but if you compare with the vectored vaccine, they were comparatively less. And you can keep mRNA vaccine somewhere between the two, where the least reactogenic to the highest reactogenic. You can see here. Now, this is a new study which is recently published, probably last month only. What they did that they took 7 different vaccine candidates, vaccines in fact. These 2 mRNA vaccine, one Novavax, then adenovirus vector, this is the Sputnik one, and Johnson and Johnson, then AstraZeneca, and one vaccine from inactivated platform. These 7 vaccines, they studied their phase 1 and phase 2 responses, mainly the neutralizing antibodies titer. Then at the same time, they took these mean level of human convalescent sera samples, and they looked for the amount of neutralizing antibodies produced by these 7 vaccines in relation to the human convalescent sample, those who have recovered from the COVID disease. And if you see that this was the one, if you see the mean level, and these are in relation to the different candidates, those who have elicited in their phase 1 and phase 2. For example, you take CoronaVac, this vaccine in phase 1 and 2 elicited around 20% of the convalescent samples amount of neutralizing antibody. Are you getting me? And on this y-axis, so what they did, they plotted on the efficacy which was seen in phase 3 trials of these 7 candidates. So on y-axis, the efficacy from the phase 3, and this is the in comparison to percentage of neutralizing antibodies titer in relation to human convalescent sera. Okay, so what they did find that there is a linear correlation between the neutralizing antibodies titer as well as their efficacy. So in other way, they can predict if suppose a vaccine is inducing very high amount of neutralizing antibodies titer, it means this vaccine is going to have higher efficacy. You can see here, there's 4 different candidates, mainly the 2 mRNA vaccine, Novavax and Sputnik. These 4 vaccines induced at least more than 4 to 8 folds higher levels of neutralizing antibodies than corresponding human convalescent samples. Okay, but the CoronaVac and these AstraZeneca and this is the Johnson Johnson, they were on the lower side. So that's why they produce lower amount of neutralizing antibodies, and that's why their efficacy ranges from 50% to around 70%. So in other way, you can now have some guess regarding the correlate of protection, because we as of today we do not know what is the correlate of protection as far as neutralizing antibodies are concerned. Initially, people thought that both the neutralizing antibodies and the T cells, they are equally responsible for providing protection. But now more and more studies are coming in favor of neutralizing antibodies. They say the amount of neutralizing antibodies induced by the candidates during their earlier clinical trial, phase 1 and 2, that determines their ultimate efficacy in the phase 3 trials, and later on the effectiveness also. So this was a very good study, and now it paves the way for having some amount of immune correlative protection. Interestingly, you see that the CoronaVac, which is Chinese inactivated vaccine, despite inducing 20% of these human convalescent sample level neutralizing antibodies, it provided around 50% protection. What does it mean? It means that for protection, you symptomatic disease against symptomatic disease, probably you need the 20% of that, which is elicited after natural infection. And if you go for this severe disease and death, even lesser amount, even 8% of this neutralizing antibodies level, which is generated by the natural infection, you need only that much amount of antibody. So this is another chart. You can see the 4 different candidates, the 2 mRNA, Novavax and Sputnik, they elicited superhuman types. You can see here, this is the mean level, and this is the 25% level of these human convalescent sample. And some of these candidates were as high, they elicited as high neutralizing antibody status as 32 to 64 times higher. So what does it mean? That certain candidates, they are very super producer of these neutralizing antibody status. And suppose if some variant is there and they have reduced their effectiveness by say 8 folds, 9 folds, 7 folds, still they will be effective against that variant because they have already produced so much high amount of neutralizing antibodies there. So this is a very well studied and this study has changed our thought process as far as immune correlative protection and the immune protection of against the variant as well as against the natural disease is concerned. Now, another way of looking at these neutralizing antibodies dynamic, this is another study which was published probably 2 months back. The researchers, they looked for 164 patients and they followed up to 6 months. And they found that not everybody is having the same amount of antibodies production. So you cannot generalize the neutralizing antibodies production in every individual. They find 5 different patterns. The 12% of patients subject, they did not induce any neutralizing antibodies. In 27% they induced neutralizing antibodies, but it waned quite rapidly. In another 29%, they were slow waning, and in 32% of these subjects, the neutralizing antibodies titers remain persistent. They stayed, and in very minute amount of 2%, there was delayed response. So it has got some clinical relevance also. You may have seen that certain persons after taking vaccines, they are going for titers, antibodies titers. So this study reflects that not all going to behave in a similar way. Some of them we have a positive antibody titer. They may persist up to 6 months, even longer. And in some, they may be, despite receiving 2 doses, they may be seronegative. They may not have antibodies in their serum because 12% may develop this thing. And in 2%, they may develop antibodies, say, after 3 months or 4 months, not after 14 days of second dose. So this is again a very interesting study. But the important thing is that in all these types of cases, 164, whether they were rapid waning or slow waning, the T cell responses remain preserved. Irrespective of whatever the dynamic of these neutralizing antibodies, T cells responses were preserved. Now coming back to these candidates, these vaccines, as I said earlier, we have around 4 different platforms on which we have licensed vaccines. And the first is the mRNA vaccine. 2 vaccine candidates you know all about is Pfizer, very high efficacy, 94 to 95%. 2 doses are needed. Initially, it was thought that they need to be stored in a very ultra low temperature, but now they have come up with formulation which can be kept at a normal refrigerator up to 30 days, 2 to 8 degrees. The important thing is that the plus points are they are highly immunogenic. They have very good both neutralizing antibodies, as I told you earlier, as well as good T cell responses, and they are very easy to produce. And you see the Moderna vaccine was developed within a week. after having the genome of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it was in the laboratory, the mRNA was found within a week itself, easy to make. And they, since they do not traverse to the nucleus, they come to the cytoplasm and to the ribosome, and their translation into the spike proteins, and they are then placed over the cell surface, and then immune responses take place. So this is, they do not traverse to the nucleus. That's why there is no risk of theoretical risk of genome integration. But there are certain negatives also, because this is a new type of platform. We have not had any type of mRNA vaccine in license or in use earlier, and these are the first two products where we had this licensed products. And as I told earlier, that they need a very low temperature, but we need a long-term safety data about, because you see that these trials are conducted within 6 months to 8 months follow-up for this much duration only. So we need longer term follow-up during the phase 4 or post-marketing surveillance. We do not know many of the some of the rarer side effects which were not visible during the efficacy trial period, because it was quite short, and if you compare with the conventional vaccine development process. One important risk is autoimmunity, and we have seen in certain parts of the where it was launched, but it was very, very rare in very minuscule of populations. For example, in Israel, there was an people call it the murky outbreak of heart attacks. In fact, it was in myocarditis. It was not reported very much, but it was probably in the last week of December itself. And but now we are seeing, I'll come to it later on, that in adolescents and young adults we are seeing myocarditis and pericarditis. Another drawback is they are very highly reactogenic, even a lot of inflammatory responses, because you have very high dose of mRNA. In Pfizer you have around 30 microgram, and here in Moderna 100 microgram. So these are the very highly inflammatory, these mRNA, and they will cause a lot of fever, side effects, etc. This is the drawbacks. And as this is the myocarditis and pericarditis. This is recently seen probably in the early phase of these vaccine rollout during the US in adolescents and young adults. It was seen so far through the WARE system, 187 cases of pericarditis, 250 odd of myocarditis till May 28. Majority of them, they were in male adolescents and young age, and that is after the second day. But the important thing is that most of them, they recovered without causing much discomfort or much serious illness. This was the positive thing. Second is, these were very, very rare even. But we need to be careful, because some certain side effects may be emerging during the rollout period itself. So that's why we need a longer term follow of these cases, especially if with these newer generation of vaccines. Coming to the another platform, which is viral vector vaccines. We have 4 different vaccines on this platform. One is Sputnik, AstraZeneca, Covishield, Johnson Johnson, and this is one Chinese vaccine, CanSino. And this is, I think, the same vaccine on which Pakistan has recently introduced PakVac. So Sputnik has got 2 different adenovirus vector. They prime with adenovirus 26 and boosted with the adenovirus 5. The problem with these viral vector vaccines is that they have you may have pre-existing antibodies against these adenoviruses, because adenovirus is an omnipotent, is present everywhere, and most of the human population, they have some amount of pre-existing immunity against them. So these pre-existing antibodies, they may interfere with the take-up of these vaccines. So that's why the Sputnik people, they have primed with adenovirus 26 and boosted with adenovirus 5, because adenovirus 26 is comparatively a rarity if you compare with adenovirus 5. So if the antibodies against this adenovirus 26 may be less if you compare with adenovirus 5. It has got very good efficacy, because it generated a huge amount of antibodies. I have shown you in earlier slide. 2 doses are needed, can be stored in 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. Then another is AstraZeneca and Covishield. It is based on chimpanzees adenovirus. And the reason why they chose chimpanzees adenovirus, because of this to avoid pre-existing antibodies. But despite choosing chimpanzees adenovirus, there was some amount of interference was there because of cross-reactive T cell phenomena. Because cross-reactive T cells were formed during the case of adenovirus 5 infection. So they interfered with it, but not to that extent as with adenovirus 5. And I'll come to the efficacy part later on, and it ranges from 62 to 90% in different vaccine trials. And doses you know all about, but you see that these all these vectors were initially developed as a single dose, apart from Gamaleya's Sputnik. But in later part, the AstraZeneca people in earlier phase, they found this immune responses were probably not that good. That's why they added another dose. Similarly, Johnson Johnson, it uses adenovirus 26, and you cannot compare this Johnson Johnson with these two, because it was tried later on in the later half of the pandemic, when most of these variants were circulating, and that's why it worked in a very hostile environment, and still it came with flying colors, and efficacy ranges from 50 to 74%. 74 was with the old wild strain in the US, 66% against the UK B117, which is alpha strain now, and 50% around South African strain 351, which is very known as the immune escaper or immune evader. And if you see, the good thing is about these all vector vaccines are they are very good inducer of CD8 cells, basically. You know, the adenoviruses, they produce not only good innate immunity, but very good cellular immunity also. So particularly CD8, and CD8, you know, is very important as far as virus killing is concerned, and they clear the viral infection. But the negative aspects is that all these viral vector vaccines are highly reactogenic, because you're using very high dose. But take the case of AstraZeneca, they're using 5 into 10 to the power 10. It means 50 billion particles of adenovirus vector are being injected. So they are bound to have very huge, significant amount of inflammatory response, basically the innate immune induced responses. So they are highly reactogenic. Another risk is autoimmunity, and this was reflected in VITT. These are the clot reactions we have seen with AstraZeneca and Johnson Johnson. The problem is the Sputnik people, they have not shared their safety data. First, second, most of their trials were conducted in Russia. So we do not know. People who are still accusing them of fudging their data, basically. But because we have seen this clot reaction with these two vaccines, and there's no point to believe that this may not be the case with Sputnik one. And this is VITT. This is vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia. It is another manifestation of autoimmune disease, and there are various hypotheses going on. And but significantly, that good thing is that this is again a very rare phenomenon. It is seen in 1 in 40,000, for example, in France, to 1 in 1 million in some other European countries, and very few cases were also seen with Johnson and Johnson. Now, people say it is mainly because of autoimmunity and some reaction to the breakdown of these viral vector particles and release of these free DNA or some nucleotides, against which are negative sense particles, and they form a complex with the positive sense platelet factor 4, and then they start immune cascade forming a complex, and they activate the immune system and causes a lot of inflammatory response with clotting also. But the latest theory which is coming up says that probably there is some problem during the transcription phase, which occurs inside the nucleus. Once the DNA is stripping off and converting into mRNA, this is called transcription. There is some splicing of mRNA, which is arbitrary splicing of mRNA occurs, and this leads to a variant protein formation. It changes in sequence, and instead of proper spike protein formation, some variant transformed spike protein is formed, which is soluble and which causes these clot reaction, because it forms a complex with platelet factor 4, and it reacts with the endothelial cells inside the vessels and causes plaque formation, and that can lead to these reactions. This is the latest regarding these VITT theory, and these are the side effects, and we need to be quite careful. Based on this, two Chinese from Sinovac and Sinopharm. These are the two Chinese vaccines. and we have our own Covaxin based on the similar platform. Their efficacy ranges from 50% to 79% in different parts, and I'll show you the efficacy data also. And the schedule is 2 doses at 20 days apart, and all the three. Storage is good, and the positive thing is that they are safe, very safe vaccine. We know them for since decades, and they are easy to develop, and they are effective against some variants also, because inactivated virus is being used. So not only spike protein, but other part of virus is also available for immune system to form antibodies and T cell responses. That's why these vaccines may be theoretically effective against different types of variants. And the problem is that they may have some incidence of these hypersensitivity reaction, and most of the immune responses induced by them are Th2 speed. Basically, they are anti-inflammatory cytokines are released. And another negative aspect is that they are limited T cell responses are seen. So, uh, and because they produce antibodies not only against the spike or RBD, which attracts the neutralizing antibodies, so many non-binding antibodies are also formed, and that may be the risk factor for antibody-dependent enhancement of it. And this is similar for all these candidates. But the good thing is here with the Covaxin is they've used a novel agonist, which is novel adjuvant, which is called LM-IMDG, imidodiazepinolone, and which is a TLR7 and 8 agonist. And what did it do? It converts the Th2 type of responses towards Th1, which are pro-inflammatory. It induces a lot of cytokines which increase the inflammation, like the tumor necrosis factor alpha and interferon gamma, etc. So this, and it was seen, I will show you their immunogenicity studies also, where they found a good amount of Th1 responses were seen. Coming to the last platform, this is a protein subunit vaccine. Again, quite an old test set, and one very you can say very important and very novel type of vaccine is being developed. This is called Novavax, and they use a novel adjuvant, which is matrixam. The problem with protein subunit vaccine is that they are not very high inducer of neutralizing antibody. But with this adjuvant, as I've shown you earlier, they produce huge amount of neutralizing antibodies response. So this is not routinely developed protein subunit where they've used spike protein and formed injected into it. Initially, what they did, they formed this first spike protein DNA, and they fixed the spike protein in the pre-fusion configuration. Okay, and then they injected this DNA into the baculovirus, and where the transcription occurs, and it produces through translation these spike proteins inside the mouse cell. They inject and they took these DNA into the baculovirus, then into the moth cell, then moth cell translation, and these are the expression of these spike proteins. And they have used a nanoparticle, lipoprotein nanoparticle, and these spike proteins were studied on it. And then this is a brown particle, this is saponin, this is a plant adjuvant, which is matrixam, a novel type. And it is then this combination of these, it was injected into the muscles. So this is a long process, not simply this ordinary type of this protein subunit. A very advanced technology is used, and that's why it is one of the premier vaccine candidates. And fortunately, India may have access to this by September probably. Serum Institute of India is developing it, and Indian government has collaboration deal with these Novavax people, and they may supply a huge amount of vaccine for our use. And if you see the efficacy wise, and again, along with Johnson Johnson, this was tried later half of the year when the variants were doing a lot of business. And but against the wild strain, the previous one, it has got excellent efficacy around 96%, and UK strain again 86%. South African strain, it was 51, which is a highly immune invader. It's almost similar to Johnson Johnson. And this is one vaccine which is being tried during in the HIV positive persons also, and it has got around 50% efficacy. So this is you cannot compare this with the other mRNA vaccine because it was tried in the later half. It is effective even in HIV positive also. Again, CVD, it is a highly effective vaccine. Now coming to in detail some of the efficacies and the immune responses related to vaccines which are being used in our country. First is the Covishield. And if you come to the efficacy wise, and these are the earlier trial which was published in January, probably in Lancet, they found that if they use two standard doses, efficacy was 60%. When low dose and standard dose, it was, I think, because of mistake, probably something to do with the quantification of this viral load, and it came 90% when the first dose was low and second dose was standard dose. But later on, it was known that it was mainly because of the long duration between the two doses rather than having low dose and this combination. Overall, it was 70%, and this is the US trial which is recently published their data, and it is not published. In fact, they have the company itself through a press conference release, and it was found that after 4 weeks interval between two doses, it was 70% effective against symptomatic and 100% against severe disease. And then these Oxford people, they further analyzed their data, and they found if you keep the difference between the two doses higher, say around 12 weeks, the efficacy jumped from 62% to 81%. And if you see, and it to also take away the artifact of low dose and the standard doses. And there was no difference between the low dose standard doses and the standard doses. So it was around 80% efficacy if you use at 12 weeks interval. Now, the recently government of India has increased from initially 4 to 6 weeks to 12 weeks to 16 weeks or 3 to 4 months. But then you can see here, there's no data on 4 months interval. Whatever data we have is up to 3 months. And this is in relation to the previously circulating D614G type of variant. The same study, which was published in February, they found that even if you use a single dose, it is holding on up to 90 days at good efficacy around 76%, and it start from 22 days to 90 days. But if you go beyond 90 days up to 120 days, the confidence interval comes into minus negatives. So it means it is not effective beyond, if you give one dose, it may not be effective after 3 months, and that number, that amount. So what does it mean? That keeping the duration between the two doses up to 4 months may not be a good idea. Coming to our another vaccine, which is homemade Covaxin. These are the phase 1 and phase 2. In phase 1, they kept 2 doses at 14 days, and in the phase 2 at 28 days. And that's why the reactogenicity was higher in these phase 1 participant. But the good thing was that seroconversion was above 92% in both phase 1 and phase 2. And but if you see the antibodies response, 66 and 197, it was less than the human convalescent serum samples taken at that time, and it was comparable to human convalescent. It means those who have suffered from COVID-19, and when you take out their serum sample, and look for antibodies, it was comparable. But here it was less. It may be because of low and less duration between the two doses. But the good thing was that with the use of these new novel type of adjuvant, it has got excellent Th1 biased response. This Th1 versus Th2, here you can see it. It was more than the Th2 type. So interferon gamma production was very good. Coming to the efficacy wise, they have recently shown their efficacy. Initially, they said it is 81% based on 48 infection. Now, few weeks back rather, it was 78% against symptomatic disease. And the interesting thing was that it was effective against Indian strain 617, as well as there was some reduction in the neutralization titer was seen around 1.8 folds. And it was effective against UK variant also, Brazil variant also, but they could not test against the South African. And if you see these antibodies responses of both Covishield as well as Covaxin after one dose. So you can see here that after one dose, Covishield induces very good amount of antibodies titer, which is 10 times higher than the Covaxin after one dose. Seen at this is after 21 days. So what does it mean? It means that the single dose of Covaxin is not that protective. It is not going to you to the adequate amount of protection, and you need a second dose as soon as possible, probably at the 4 weeks interval after the first dose. And similarly, you can see the responder rate, only 43% seroconverted after single dose. But if you look for the adverse event, Covaxin scores over Covishield, and it is expected, as I've shown you earlier also, and it was less reactogenic. Now coming to the next part of my talk, this is regarding the population level impact when these vaccines were rolled out from December onward. And this is the one country, Israel, where you have seen the maximum amount of impact of these newer generation vaccines. You see the Israel used Pfizer vaccine, and in the December 2019 they have introduced, and by April 20th they could achieve zero COVID deaths. So it worked exceedingly well in Israel. But mind you, in the background also the lockdowns were going on, and Israel is one country that had around 3 or 4 very strict lockdown, but it worked there. And similarly, the number of cases have gone down considerably with the Pfizer vaccine. And I've shown you the effectiveness level of this Pfizer mRNA in Israel. They found they prevented death around 97% of cases. Severe disease, again the same. And interestingly, they also prevented the asymptomatic infection. This was not expected of these new generation COVID vaccines, but this Pfizer vaccine did exceedingly well, and it provided even protection against the asymptomatic transmission also 91%, and symptomatic disease very good 97%. So Pfizer, Israel is one country which was rolling out vaccine, and at the same time they were studying impact also in different populations. Similarly, I'm not going into detail of the US data, 94% efficacy with 2 doses, effectiveness rather, and this is both the Pfizer and Moderna. Coming to the very latest data from the UK, where there's a same variant which is prevalent in our country, is also circulating there. And interestingly, they initially launched this Pfizer and followed up with AstraZeneca. And here you can see this AstraZeneca is matching Pfizer vaccine as far as symptomatic disease as well as hospitalization time. Almost the same range of effectiveness with the two vaccines. But when the transmission of an disease from an infected person to another uninfected person, the secondary cases, there was some gradient, similar in around 10% gradient in the two vaccines. But Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine did very well there in UK, but it was during the B117 times, and the Indian strain was coming up. I'll show you the data of the latest 617 variant versus these vaccines in due course of time. Now, not only this, these vaccines are effective against the asymptomatic transmission, but the hard impact was also seen. Indirect effect of these vaccines was also seen in the household members. You see, this is the relative risk relative risk reduction. You see here, this is the follow-up week up to 10 weeks, and this is the vaccinated individuals, and this is the unvaccinated spouse, the household. This is related to the healthcare workers. So this vaccine not only reduced the risk of these getting disease in the vaccinated, but in the unvaccinated household also. This is again a good plus of these mRNA. You see that we found this good amount of protection and good vaccine effectiveness in many countries of Europe, for example, in Scotland, UK, Sweden also, and Israel I've shown you, US I've shown you, and some other countries of Middle East also that they have launched. But in certain parts of the world, these vaccines have limited impact. For example, in Chile, one country which has got the third highest rate of vaccination after UK and Israel, despite giving uh, vaccines to most towards around the 30, more than 30% fully vaccinated, and despite that they suffered huge outbreaks in the April. Why it is though? Because they were using a different type of vaccine. This was CoronaVac, inactivated vaccines, and majority of them it was CoronaVac, and only very few had Pfizer vaccine, and they found only 3% efficacy after effectiveness after first dose, and overall the CoronaVac was around 50 to 60% effective after 2 doses. So probably they erred and they opened up their country after single dose. It was, and I think, a huge error done by these country people. And but again here, despite vaccinating lot many people, it could not contain the disease. Similarly, same thing happened in Seychelles, very small tiny countries, and they had used the Sinopharm inactivated vaccine from China and AstraZeneca also as COVID. And despite receiving single dose and 62% receiving 2 doses. It suffered outbreak, and they are now in the lockdown or any strict restriction during the first phase. And it is for the first time they are locking up now, despite giving 34% single dose and to the 25% population of 2 doses. And mind you, they are employing very highly efficacious these mRNA vaccines. So why did they suffer? It is mainly because of this Indian variant, which is called Delta now. This is 617.2. And this is the reason why, because it is highly transmissible, and that's why they suffer. And Uruguay is another country which which use the vaccines in a good amount. Say you can see the around the 1/3 of population was fully vaccinated, and more than 50% had got the single dose. And despite of that, they suffered outbreak here. You can see here they may have the highest number of per capita mortality due to COVID. And again, here it was mainly because of this P1 variant, which is there in the Brazil and some other part of the South American country. So, but the other differentiating feature was they are not using mRNA vaccine, but the CoronaVac from Sinovac, China. So it shows that these vaccines were highly effective in certain parts, but they failed to work as good in other part of the world. Maybe because of some gradient in the effectiveness of these vaccines, and mainly other issue was the emergence of these variants, new variants or mutations in the virus, which were having immune escape potential. Coming to the Indian performance, as you see, India is still India using these two vaccines, and but the pace of inoculation is very sluggish. Initially, we were inoculating now it is on, and less than 4% are fully vaccinated, and only 12%. This is a whole slide. 12% has got first dose, and in that way, expect it would have any impact on the population level or country level? No, because for that you need at least sizable people should have been vaccinated by now. Around 60 to 70% is the minimum threshold to gain herd immunity. But even if you are not gaining herd immunity, we are not nowhere near where we can make any impact. This is at the population level. It means the vaccines in India have become inconsequential as far as the whole scenario, the population level is concerned. But if you see it does not mean that vaccines are useless, because they are providing you individual level protection. Those who have received 2 doses and after some time they are protected. And it is being reflected in some of the data, but at the country level, it is quite unfortunate that we are not having any impact right now, because you've seen in Israel around 64% now, the vaccinated population, the single dose. Similarly, US is now more than 50, Brazil, even it is suffering, but still they're having much higher vaccination rate than India. India is still struggling at 12%. And this is the fully vaccinated data. So India is probably not fully utilizing them. And if we increase our inoculation rate tremendously, say, for example, 1 crore vaccines per day, then we can think of achieving something substantial by the end of this year. Otherwise, it will take years to reach the threshold of herd immunity. And similarly, there is no effectiveness data so far. We may have introduced inoculated around more than 220 million doses, but still we do not have any effectiveness data from, even not from some specific population. And this is one patchy data shared by ICMR. This is on the breakthrough rate. And here they found that Covaxin is having almost double the rate of breakthrough cases, vaccine failure cases than the Covishield. But if you compare with the CDC data, it is 18-fold higher for Covaxin and 10-fold higher for Covishield. But this is again patchy data. It's not showing you the complete picture. They have started tracking these only after April 14. Now coming to the another issue, how to deal with the scarcity of vaccine, because right now the India is having shortage of vaccines, and that's why this is the reason they have increased the duration between 2 doses of Covishield. This is not because of scientific reason, but because of the shortage of the scarcity of the vaccine. So can we have some change in the policy for those who have already been infected? Now we have around 15 or 16 studies globally where they have shown that those who have already infected, And if you give them a single dose of mRNA vaccine, then the response, immune response may be higher, even higher than those who received 2 doses of mRNA vaccine, but not previously infected. So this is shown here. Those who, even after second dose, single dose recipients were having higher amount of immune response. No doubt there's slight increase in the reactogenicity. So far, this is again, they have shown not only the antibodies level, but you see, this is the red one. These are the recovered patients, those pre-infected. These blue one are the naive cases. They have given 2 doses mRNA vaccine. This is primary, this is booster. And what did they found? The red one is the pre-infected. They found that these are the antibodies, these are the memory B cells. Single dose, but it plateau after second dose, after this first dose, after some time, and there was no further increase in antibodies level, neither in antibodies nor in the memory responses. But the blue one, those who were naive, basically, they were not infected, they had a higher response with the second dose also. Similarly, these memory B responses were also increased. So this is a good study. It reduces after in older age group. So elderly people after 50, probably they were not as good in user of memory responses as the young people. This is the same. So this is a very interesting study. But you see, right now we had all the studies done with the mRNA vaccine, and right now few studies. This is from Sweden, where they have used AstraZeneca. Even they found that those who were previously infected, even a single dose of AstraZeneca vaccine in the pre-infected had got similar or even higher immune responses to those who naive people who received 2 doses of Pfizer vaccine. And not only against the wild strain, but against this UK strain, this South African, and this Brazilian also. And one Indian study is recently published. This is on preprint, and from Agra, UP itself, they found that Covishield, similarly, after 2 doses, those who were already infected, previously infected, there's a significantly higher amount of antibodies than those who were uninfected. And again, this is before any dose. This is after 20 days of 2 doses. There's significant increase in the antibodies level. And one very important finding of this study was that those who were infected earlier, they have got very little reinfection rate of breakthrough cases. It was only 2.5%, but those who were uninfected, they had a significantly higher reinfection rate or breakthrough cases, up to 22%. Now, this is the last segment of my talk. This is something which is very and appearance of these variants will decide the fate of our further surges, the future surges. We have a lot of talk about this. A lot of talk is going on the third wave, and it all depends on these variants basically. You see this pink one. This is the current variant, which is now WHO is called Delta, and this is the B616172. This is, you can see here. This is the May slide. May data, and they found that you find that there's a majority of these viruses basically from this B617.2. So this is the variant that's engulfed the entire country, and this is believed to be highly transmissible. I'll show you one slide, but it is, you can say that 60% more transmissible than the UK strain, which is considered to be the most transmissible variant seen anywhere in the world. And it is 2.5 times more transmissible than the wild strain, which is D614G. And it is now reported from more than 60 countries. And I'll show you that it has got immune escape potential also. It has reduced the immunization, protection level of certain vaccines also. Now, this is the parent 617, and it has got 3 sublineages. This 611, 2, and 3. And this 6172, this is the Delta one. This is the most important one, and because it is having the highest amount of spike protein. This is the spike protein, and these are the RBD. And this is blue one is the N-terminal domain. So these are the deletions basically. and it has got around 8 mutations in the spike proteins with important 156.7 deletion also. This deletion is permanent basically. Substitutions can be corrected by the proofreader, but not these deletions. And this is the 617, this at point 1, it has got around 6 mutation, this has got 7 mutations. So this is the most problematic variant currently right now. So now the question, good thing is that the majority of these vaccines, they are effective against different variants, but they may have some amount of lower effectiveness. And you can see this is the 617, and this is the Indian variant. And even these Bharat vaccine, Pfizer and Moderna, they are in the lab studies, they have found that it works. And the real world data is also there that they may be effective. Because as I told you earlier, because this depends upon the amount of antibodies responses generated by a particular candidate. Even if there is some reduction of 5-fold, 6-fold, 7-fold, still because they had produced superhuman titers, they may still be effective. And similarly, if you see the Pfizer vaccine, and this is the latest data from Qatar, they found it after 1 dose against the South African variant, which is considered to be the most immune evader. It was only 17%, but after 2 doses, it was 75%. But the important thing was that against the severe and critical disease, it was 100% efficacy. And as I told you earlier, this is Johnson and Johnson. It was 52 variant. So it means that, and the important thing is that they are more effective against the severe and critical diseases. Coming to the very latest data from the PHE, which is Public Health England, and they have found that they studied this Pfizer and well AstraZeneca vaccine from April 5 to May 16, and they found that the single dose of both the vaccines, Pfizer as well as AstraZeneca, was only 33% effective against this particular strain, which may be which is responsible for our second wave, and which is predominant strain right now in India. So this study has certain implications for us also. So it means that you cannot rely on single dose of AstraZeneca, and even after 2 doses, it was only 59.8%. It means if you are having gap of around 12 weeks, probably it may not be that protective. Here, there may be a window of susceptibility that this variant can rip through. And this is again another slide which is having the latest nomenclature from WHO also. You can see which is our Indian variant 617.2 is called now Delta. It has got highest transmissibility. You can see it is higher than the UK strain, which is Alpha. And the immune evading potentials is also increasing. It is up to, it's slightly lower than the 351, which is a South African variant, but these are still early days, and experts are still evaluating it. So should we worry about these variants? No, because what is protective against this? It maybe you see the neutralizing antibodies may be affected. The epitope is code for this neutralizing antibodies. They may be affected during these mutations, but not the T cell epitopes. And in fact, it is shown in V117 that certain T cell epitopes are gained after mutations, and the majority of them, they remain unaffected. This is the blue one, and there may be some epitopes which are lost, but you see the CD4 cell, if you check that CD4 epitope, they are 280, huge amount of epitopes are there. So even if few of them are ablated or lost, it may not affect ultimate performance of your vaccine, especially because CD8 and CD8 cell, they work against the severe infection and they prevent the deaths basically. So that's why even if you are having these variants, the CD cell will come to your rescue. And this is one interesting diagram. It shows that these different types of protective mechanisms, these are the neutralizing antibodies, these are CD4 T cells, these CD8 cells, and these are the memory B cells. You see, as the amount of protection given by these neutralizing antibody, it reduces as there is variant divergence is increased. As the variant becomes more divergent from its original strain, original variant, and the protection offered by neutralizing antibodies is decreasing, but the protection given through the CD8 and CD4 cell, as well as from a memory B cell, they remain preserved. So this is very interesting, and that's why we need to worry about these variants much as far as severe disease and death is concerned. And we have seen this having B117, and they introduced vaccines late, this managed to bring the deaths to the zero now. Similarly, South Africa, despite of having very minuscule amount of vaccine used, they could still contain this the B1351, which is a highly are increasing their vaccination coverage. And even for India also, you can see, despite giving vaccine to only 4% of our population, 2 doses, we could manage to ban this curve. So despite having a highly transmissible variant, just like 617.2, we could manage to bring down the cases down, and cases are going down. So it means that we should not worry too much, but we again, here not only vaccines, we need this, other non-pharmacological mitigation measures like social distancing, masking, and other precautions to COVID appropriate behavior to control these variants. And this is the fully vaccinated coverage. I've shown you this earlier also. Now coming to the last slide regarding this presentation, this is how the pandemics end basically. We have seen the pandemics from the Russian flu, which was in 1890 probably, then we had Spanish flu in 1970, 1980, early part of this last century. And the truth of matter is that even after that, we have other pandemics also. We had the avian flu, H1N1, then Russian flu again, and we had SARS, MERS, and we had this H1N1 in pandemic. They always end basically. And to date, vaccines have never played a significant role in it, because we didn't have vaccines against SARS, not against MERS, and earlier against Spanish flu, we didn't have vaccines, but still we could manage to. And we had vaccines against this swine flu, but still the usage was quite limited. So you see, despite of having not having vaccine, we could manage, and these pandemics end. But it does not mean the vaccines are not going to play any role. They are critical. As I told you earlier, they provide at least individual protection. And now the latest generation of vaccines like mRNA vaccine, they are highly effective, highly efficacious, and they can, along with your other restriction methods, they can bring down the cases tremendously, and they can limit the mortality also. And at the middle level, and is very good, but some others they are struggling. In India, we need to turn vaccines into vaccination. What right now the pace of vaccination is very sluggish, and at the public level, at the population level, they are not having any impact at all because we are not vaccinating enough people. And another issue is the rapid deployment, as I told you, and vaccine nationalism is hurting us. You see, the US is already having excess amount of vaccine. They are lying redundant. Similarly, Canada, they have vaccine which can be given to even 3 times to their entire population. And you see the certain African countries where there's hardly any vaccines available. In certain countries like African countries, I was just going through that only 80 or 100 people are vaccinated. And because they have that much amount of vaccine. So equitable distribution is the major concern. And as I said, these are the game changer variants, but ultimately this virus will tired and it will run through all its trick, and ultimately it may devise a suicidal sort of a mutation, and that will come to its end. But it depends whether it will go the SARS way, if it devises a suicidal type of mutation, or it will remain as the influenza way where you need booster every year. But the most of the experts, they believe that this virus will continue with us in the form of a very mild seasonal smaller surges in very young population like infants 0 to 5 years. Similarly, the cold coughs like that, and for which you don't need to give any vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very lucid presentation of very complex things about vaccines, because vaccines, the efficacy and all is usually an enigma for all of us, but you have explained everything in a very simple manner. Is Dr. Jayaraman sir is here, Praveen? Okay, so he is there. Hello?
No.
Okay, I find Vijay Kumar sir here, or president-elect for the year. So a quick comment from sir, and then we will go to the questions. Vijay Kumar sir.
Respected sir, Pipin sir, and Riaz, it was an excellent presentation. As far as with all this, everybody is saying that we are going for a third wave, and especially the third wave may affect children. This talk is very useful regarding the vaccination and the next pandemic and all these things. So I think there are a lot of questions in the chat box.
Okay, I shall.
We can start. Riaz can start reading the questions. Thank
Yes.
you so much for coming virtually to Kerala and enlightening us about this COVID vaccination. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So the first question is, what's the minimum interval recommended for COVID vaccination for a person who recovers from COVID-19 infection?
Okay, you see, recently Government of India changed their recommendation. Earlier they said after say 3 to 4 weeks, once the person is asymptomatic, they can go for the vaccination. But now they say after 3 months. Earlier they said up to 6 months, but now they have reduced it to 3 months. So once you had COVID infection, after 3 months you can go for vaccination. And in certain European countries also, probably they had around 90 days window after infection for go for vaccination. As I shown you earlier that even probably a single dose may be sufficient.
So there is one question: won't hyperimmunogenicity produce more myocarditis? I don't know.
Yeah. I think still these are very early days. People are still investigating, and therefore till now there is no conclusive hypothesis or theory is there what causes these myocarditis or pericarditis. But my gut feeling is this may be because of autocorrective autoimmune response because of this very high amount of supraphysiologic amount of these antigens which are given in these both mRNA vaccine as well as from this viral vector vaccine. So probably we need to cut down the amount of antigens we are giving through these vaccines. This may be one reason. These are probably the manifestation of autoimmune responses. And what is the exact mechanism of these autoimmune responses? This is again debatable, and people are working on it. And probably in due course of time, say about 14 days or 28 days, you will have something on the anvil. Why these responses are occurring. But similar thing was seen in Israel. Probably I have seen one preprint. They have mentioned that in Israel in December itself there were cases of these myocarditis. And as I told you one earlier in one of the slides that it was in a murky outbreak of heart attacks. Suddenly there was spurt of heart attacks in Israel, as well as you must have heard about the Norway incident where the people have died. So it may be these all manifestations of autoimmune reaction. If you go through the review of these early generation DNA vaccines or these vector vaccines, you may see that they have described that autoimmunity induced pericarditis, myocarditis, these even adenovirus associated these reactions like transverse myelitis and multiple sclerosis, they may happen. So, but the good thing is they are very, very rare events.
So connected with that, there is another question. Can an adult who has recovered from MISA be given COVID vaccine? Will that be at a more risk for resurgence of the hyperimmune response?
I think there are no such guidelines. First of all, the MIS is very rare in adults. What we have seen in particularly in pediatric adolescent age group. And again, I think there's no point to discourage vaccination of these people. And I don't see any guideline, any recommendation from CDC or FDA, whether they have addressed this issue. Even I think even for adolescents, there are no such recommendation. But we need to be quite careful of these specific group of children basically, because it is seen mainly in the pediatric and adolescents age group.
And sir, regarding the vaccination for pregnant women and breastfeeding already the guidelines are there. For pregnant women, what is your take, sir? Like
think,
the guidelines are yet to come.
For pregnant women, there are studies from both Pfizer, Moderna, as well as from AstraZeneca during their efficacy trial. For those who were accidentally enrolled, and they found that there was no untoward reaction was seen, neither to the development of premature labor or any teratogenic effect. But they have more data on second and third trimester. We are still waiting for this first trimester data. And once it is available, I think they should be given a green signal for this vaccination during pregnancy also. Government of India is still waiting for the data to come, and probably they are doing trial in this particular group, because these pregnant women, they are more prone to develop serious disease and more likely to die because of COVID than the non-pregnant.
Sir, any idea of a mixing of vaccines? Is there a chance? Because people are asking this.
Yeah, mixing, I think hypothetically and immunologically, it is a good idea. If initially it was thought, if neutralizing antibodies are going to be the main correlate of protection, if it is seen that the neutralizing antibodies will prevent the disease or severe disease or infection, those vaccines which are producing or eliciting the lower amount of antibodies, they will be benefited by giving a booster shot of those candidates which are having high immunogenicity, for example, mRNA vaccine or protein subunit vaccine. Now, for the last few weeks, we have seen that more and more people, they are convinced through animal studies as well from the human data, that it is the neutralizing antibodies which are preventive, not the T cell responses. So that's why for those candidates who have taken one dose of particular vaccine, which is not having good immune responses like inactivated vaccine, they will be benefited if you followed it up with the mRNA vaccine or protein subunit vaccine. But for this, you need a trial basically, you need data. And I think for so far we have data on AstraZeneca as well as Pfizer. And I think 3-4 countries, they are doing this mix and match. So one is UK, they have shared their safety data. They found slightly higher reactogenicity, but efficacy part they are still working on. And one is Spain. I think they have shown that though AstraZeneca dose is followed by Pfizer, they have found 7-fold higher neutralizing antibodies response. So it is definitely working, but without any data trial, it may be of off-label use to give this prime booster or heterologous prime booster vaccine doses or mix or match.
Sir, on that itself, this Covaxin is not accepted abroad. So if someone has already taken Covaxin and they want to go abroad, how to proceed?
I think, as I told you earlier, because right now these people may be benefited if you followed up with the booster shot of either the inactivated vaccine after 6 months of a 016 schedule, or give a dose of another highly immunogenic like mRNA vaccine or Novavax after 3 months of completing the course. But the problem is, depends upon, you can also have the antibodies reports with you, anti-spike or anti-RBD, anti-IgG antibodies. If the regulatory authorities and their custom people and their other authorities are confident, they allow you to move inside, then this okay. Otherwise, there is no other option, because this vaccine is not available. These two vaccines, mRNA and the Pfizer vaccine, they are not available. So I think, but you see, the last yesterday, WHO has approved Sinovac, CoronaVac, and very soon we are probably in the next 2 weeks or so, we are going to have this Covaxin is also being approved by WHO.
Sir, is there any problem for G6PD deficient persons in taking the vaccine?
I have not seen any absolute contraindication with this condition.
And there is one question like, when can we expect our children getting vaccinated? Because with this
I think the trials have started. The Covaxin people, Bharat Biotech is doing trial from 2 years onwards, and probably in the 4 to 6 months they should have their data. In the other countries like the US, they have already started adolescent immunization. But the problem here is, I see first in India, we need to give vaccine to those who need it the most, basically the more susceptible people, elderly people, those healthcare workers, those who are more likely to contract the disease and die because of it. If you give the vaccination to these people, then you can give a sort of a cocoon type of immunization rather than giving to very young children. So I am not in favor of immunizing very young children, say around 0 to 5 years, because you are ultimately, if they are infected, their antibodies level will be higher and they will remain protected for much more longer time. And the disease there is extremely mild and very rare percentage of them, they turn out to be in the severe disease. So to me, I think it is okay if you vaccinate only adolescents, say around 12 to 18 years, it's okay. But before that, you vaccinate your elderly population, those who are more susceptible, rather than going for the kids basically. That is acceptable if you have around 40-60% of a full vaccination course in the country. Then you can think of vaccinating young children, but not the 0 to 5 years. I'm not in favor of vaccinating.
Sir, what about, can you suggest a best schedule for Covishield? Like, I think you told it is 3 months. No, sir.
No, considering if you see the PHE data, latest data from Public Health England, where this new variant Delta 1, which is Indian variant, is circulating, they have shown that a single dose may not be very effective, 33%. So you need to complete the schedule as soon as possible. In considering that, we should have, I think, again, the 4 to 6 week interval would be the best, considering that variant. So 12 weeks may be too long. So you may not be protected at all up to 6 to 8 weeks. So that's why you need early completion of 2-dose schedule.
Okay. And I think never more than 3 months. No, sir. 12 weeks is the maximum.
12 weeks, considering the previous type of, because
Right.
it is based on the previous variant, but not the current one.
And sir, do you think the present waning of cases have anything to do with vaccines in our country?
No,
Whether it happened because
not
of the, no.
percent of full vaccination coverage will have any impact on the ongoing, which is the sending of cannot. Even if you achieve around 60% with this current ongoing upswing of this pandemic, it won't have any impact on this particular way, but it may prevent the future surge, provided the same variant is circulating there also. So in all due course, you have seen that I've shown you the South African example where hardly any vaccination is there. Still they could manage. Even in India, we have went this peak without vaccines. It is working at the individual level, not at the population level. You cannot expect the vaccine will have any impact whatsoever.
So that is one of our esteemed members have developed GBS after Covishield. Now it is 3 months. So he's asking whether he can change to any other vaccines. And
yeah, I think most likely it is adenovirus induced autoimmune response. Because see, the adenoviruses, they are they have more predilection for neural tissue specifically. And the neural infection is much more common because of they are not always benign ones, these adenoviruses. So most likely it was a vaccine complication, maybe a manifestation of autoimmune response. And I won't advise them to take any vector vaccine. And if they go for this antibodies level, if they have reasonably good amount of anti-spike or anti-RBD, anti-IgG antibodies, they should not go for further immunization. But again, they can go for protein cell immunity, which is safe platform. If they are not having, if they have received single dose or their antibodies are nil, only then they can go for it.
Sir, can a person vaccinated with Covishield take mRNA vaccine as booster dose when it is available?
Yeah. Going on.
Right.
which is going on. The trials are going on, and it does make sense also.
Sir, there is a comment from Dr. Arup Roy. Around 600 Indian doctors had expired after 2 doses of vaccination.
Yeah.
But
You see, no vaccine is 100% effective. No vaccine is 100% safe. We know this thing. Even in the US, you see, they have used the mRNA vaccine, which are considered to be safe and highly efficacious. Even there also 200 deaths have occurred. This is the old data. There also, after taking 2 doses. So if you consider the current vaccine effectiveness, we don't have any data. But my gut feeling is that considering the variant, considering these PHE data, the 2-dose efficacy would effectiveness would be around 50 to 60% against the symptomatic disease, and at the most 60 to 70% against the severe disease and death. So it means there is still some gap, and that's why the people may still die despite using these 2 doses. But you should keep this COVID appropriate behavior in place despite fully vaccinated.
thank you, sir. We have covered most of the questions.
Yes.
And Praveen, is there anyone who wants to ask a question directly, or Praveen can unmute?
Yeah, it's unmuted. Anyone can.
Sir, can I ask a question, sir?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
sure.
Anju, please.
Thank you, sir. Vipin, sir, it was a very important and revealing, excellent presentation. Myself, Dr. Anju Karmani, sir. I am working in the COVID control room for the last 1 year and all. So I basically had one question, because Riya sir was telling that you are also in charge of the COVID site also. And we have elaborated regarding the importance of vaccination of our country, people in the country and all. But right now, what we are experiencing is that around 3 o'clock, this site actually opens, and many people who are eager to register for this vaccination, within 5 or 7 or 10 minutes, this vaccination sessions are being filled and all. So many people, my friends and everybody, relatives, everybody is asking why this is happening and all. So, sir, is there is there entirely, is it attributable to the vaccine shortage, or is there any way in which we can actually improve, or is there in the near future, are we trying to improving the software glitches that we are having, sir? Thank you for listening, sir.
One minute, Anju. Actually, sir is with our IAP module for vaccines, not our actual COVID app.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
I think this is a policy issue.
Sir.
This should
Sir,
be
shall I
taken
ask
care by program managers, basically.
Yes, sir. Sir, one more question I had actually. We have elaborated that this Delta is a reason for the second wave. So for the third wave, do we have any variant already in, identified? And also, sir, do you have any suggestions regarding improving the vaccination percentages? Because many people are reluctant to vaccinate.
Could you repeat the second question? I could not get the second one. There's some
So because the vaccination coverage is very low in our country, and
yeah. See, I think
so I was just asking, do you have any suggestions to improve the vaccination percentage in our country? Because there are multiple reasons for people not getting vaccinated.
I think the first of all, we need to make these vaccines available to us. Basically, right now, what we are having, we are not having enough vaccine to vaccinate more than 2 million people per day. When you don't have reserve of vaccines with you, how can you go about increasing the coverage? I think unless we have increased production, increased import, increased availability of vaccines, only then we can think of increasing coverage per day coverage. As I told you earlier, it was initially around 4 million. We have touched around 3.8 million, but now we have regressed up to 1.8 or 2 million doses per day. The problem is we are not having adequate amount of vaccines. The one way out could be if we start using some live attenuated older vaccine like the BCG or MW vaccines or MMR vaccines to those who are highly susceptible groups. So we can increase their innate immunity to a certain extent, and this will work very fast, say about in hours to days. If you talk of innate immunity, it takes weeks to develop some amount of protection. So in certain group of population which are more susceptible, which are, because these vaccines are easily available, they are very cheap, and we are using them. So this can be used. And in fact, there was a paper in proceeding of National Academy of Sciences from US, and one virologist, very renowned and virologist, Konstantin Chumakov, he has written that these vaccines may be quite handy, not only in increasing your innate immune response, but also the bridging the gap between these vaccines are available to us, and they will work in complement to these specific vaccines, which work mostly on the adaptive immune system. Another issue is that they can also provide you some protection against the future pandemic, and they may provide you protection against the future variants also, because they are non-specific inducer of your innate immunity in the form of natural killer cells and macrophages and monocytes. They may have some sort of non-specific memory also, trained immune immunity, you know about it. So this is the one way. I've written one article on this issue also, but it can be done. But otherwise, you don't have any option. When you don't have vaccines, you cannot increase your coverage. Second issue is when the next wave will come, or whether it will be guided through or triggered through a new variant. Yes, definitely. If a new variant is there, only then this will come, because this is mainly there because of this 617.2 or 1 type of variant, the second wave. And this is in the nature of virus. Basically, they keep on changing, but their main aim is to get more transmissible, to get more people to infect, so that they can survive. But ultimately, the disease caused by them, it becomes milder and milder. And later on, as I told you earlier, that probably you will have this virus settled in young kids in a form of fifth type of human common cold coronavirus. So, but saying that it will cause by a new variant, when will it come? It is very difficult. But considering the current scenario where we have very low vaccine coverage, there is no vaccine pressure to the virus, probably it will keep on mutating, infecting people, and more chances of getting mutated. Okay.
Thank you, sir. I
Thank you.
think
Thank you, sir.
I will have the last question from Bennett Salem, sir. Bennett Salem, sir, was raising his hand. Sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much, sir. My doubt is basically for those who want to go abroad, they have already taken a Covaxin, and but after that the news has come, it is not WHO approved, and the time is very short. So can they shift to Covishield after at least 1 month? And after 1 month, first Covishield, then after 1 more month, second Covishield. Can they take it already? Those who have taken already the Covaxin, that is my doubt.
Yeah, you see, I've already discussed this issue. I think by the 2 months, I'm sure that WHO will definitely approve this, because already 2 out of 3 inactivated vaccines have been approved. There are some issues with the sharing of certain data from the Bharat Biotech with the WHO authorities, those who go for pre-qualification. I think by 1 or 2 months, they should definitely approve this vaccine, because there are scarcity of vaccines, and there are not enough doses in COVAX also. This is theoretically possible. You can go for Covishield also, but it will take time. You see, if you have taken 2 doses of vaccine, ideally you should wait 3 months before taking another shot of it. And I think by the 3 months, even Novavax should come. By September, Novavax should be here. And if it comes, and before that, Zydus may be available. But you need data, you need trial, you need documentation. And ultimately, I think the easiest way out is probably by 1 month, it should be approved by WHO. Because you see, the CoronaVac and the Sinopharm, these 2 inactivated vaccines, they were not also having their phase 3 data published anywhere in peer-reviewed journal. Despite of that, because they were used in certain countries and they found reasonably good effect as far as effectiveness is concerned. That's why WHO has considered their case and given go-ahead signal to them, approve them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Actually, it was a very good discussion also, a lot of participation from the delegates too. We actually asked her to give this lecture only last week, and within a very short time, a busy person like him was very kind enough to come to us and discuss the topic in very all detail, and answered all our questions. And on behalf of IAP Trivandrum, I offer our gratitude to sir, and also to all the participants who have joined from all parts of the country. Actually, it is not only from Trivandrum and Kerala. I can see many leaders of IAP in the participants list. Sangeeta madam is also there. Hey madam, thank you for joining. I think we should carry forward this awareness program on vaccines, and we all hope that this pandemic will end soon. As sir had told, even without vaccine, the pandemics do end. Over to Praveen for conclusion. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bipin sir, for the excellent presentation.
Thank you and congratulations. I enjoyed.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bipin sir, for the excellent presentation and also answering all the queries relating vaccination. Secondly, I thank Dr. Riaz for making this initiative and arranging this program. Also, thank all the participants for making this a very successful program. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night. Good night.